Welcome into the Solo Shot Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Dom Manna. Happy Solo Shot Saturday. Little late night. We're going live for the first time in a minute, and I think it's a great way to send off the old intro and the old design. I've cooked up a new one that will be debuting for the start of the Major League Baseball season. And man, do we have a lot to cover. But before we get into this, I just have to say, if you weren't with me on the World Baseball Classic, I don't know what to tell you. Even the bad in the World Baseball Classic, the players that have dropped out and returned to their team's camps, or the whole Mark DeRosa situation, which everybody was like completely on board with Mark DeRosa getting handed the reins again for Team USA. I remember openly talking about it last time around that this is really the best manager that the United States has to offer to manage all this talent in such a high leverage situation where, you know, putting pride for country. And then he ended up losing the championship. He came back, and I think he finally showed to the more casual people that he's not a future big league manager. He is not someone who probably should have been in this role. And while, yes, they did make it to the next round, and of course, they were able to beat Team Canada, but that's kind of bare minimum for them to make it to the semis and to beat a team like Canada. I'm expecting the Dominican Republic to really have their way with them. Even with Paul Skeens on the mound, I just don't want to see the United States get rewarded for suboptimal things like that. Bruce Bochy could have been managing this team. Mike Scioscia or any other former big league manager with actual clout and professional experience, like every other all-star on this team. Mark DeRosa, really bad look for himself, obviously, but I think for USA Baseball as well. To have brought him back in the first place, but then for it to happen the way that it has, even if they end up winning the whole thing, I think it'll have a really sour taste in its mouth. We are here to talk National League Baseball today. There's a lot to go over. Last week's episode was over an hour, my first one of those in a while, so I'm going to try to condense this out. But essentially what we do is we go through each division. I talk about what order I think the teams are going to finish in, what player I think is the X factor for each team, and I hint towards which teams I think are going to make the playoffs and which players are going to win the awards, and we'll round it out there. So we're going to start in the East as we did last week, and the NL East is extremely interesting because there's only one team in it that I think has no shot of making any noise this year, and that is the Washington Nationals. They are still amidst a multi-year rebuild with guys like James Wood, Mackenzie Gore, and CJ Abrams being kind of like, oh, this is the rebuild. But now Mackenzie Gore has been shipped out. There's been rumors about CJ Abrams either getting moved off shortstop or getting moved out of Washington in general. The Nationals have a pretty rough team. Josiah Gray, former All-Star, is still in that rotation. Cade Cavalli, who looked very bad last year, but was one of the 5 pitchers Foolish Bailey liked heading into 2026. So he's been very good with those predictions. Maybe Cade Cavalli turns a corner. They obviously have some prospects, but they're going to be giving guys like Miles Mikolas and Zach Littell real run and real innings this year. It's really, really rough there. They traded for Harry Ford this offseason to be their catcher. Kyber Ruiz has kind of ran his course. He's 27 years old, hasn't really done anything impressive. So Harry Ford's going to get a chance to be a big league catcher, which he was blocked behind Cal Raleigh in Seattle. The infield, the usual suspects like we talked about, CJ Abrams and Luis Garcia have been there for many years. They're going to be playing a handful of different guys throughout their roster, all guys that are under 30 years old. And the outfield, obviously having James Wood, having Dylan Cruz, former number 2 overall pick in the draft, and Robert Hassell, who is another piece from that Juan Soto San Diego trade. That outfield really is the team this year in terms of fantasy baseball, in terms of real relevance. That is the team. Jacob Young is a fantastic defensive center fielder who's probably going to play more games than Hassell to start the season. But if the bat doesn't turn around for Young, I could definitely see Hassell taking that job. The X factor for me when you're talking about this team is the young coaching staff. Their manager is 30 years old, and a lot of the coaches on their team are between age 26 and 35. Not only is this team young, but the coaching staff is extremely young. And obviously they're not trying to win games, but the Nationals, for just the future of coaching, I mean, everyone thought the Rams were crazy for hiring Sean McVay as a head coach at his age. If the Nationals are able to defy expectations and build during this time frame into a contender over the next couple years, it'll be a marvel and a real success for a team that hasn't really smelled any since they won the championship in 2019. Orlando, friend of the show, is in the chat saying the Miami Marlins have no shot either. Orlando, I'm not saying they have a chance to win the division, but there's definitely a world where this Marlins team has one of those seasons and makes the wild card. They are not talent deprived. And it starts with the pitching staff because, yes, they did trade Edward Cabrera as well. But Sandy Alcantara is still at the top of that rotation. And Yuri Perez is one of the best young pitchers in the game. So those two at the top, I still think there's another level to get out of Max Meyer. They have a ton of exciting arms. They have guys at the back end too, like Chris Paddock, to eat up innings. I think the Marlins are going to be fine with the chance to be sneaky good. And the main reason why is because of their young lineup. Augustin Ramirez, last year, 20 home run power and a guy who could steal 20 bases, like a very, very good offensive catcher. And their infield, Xavier Edwards and Otto Lopez, have both, since swapping positions, shortstop and second base, have been very, very impactful players. So I like them up the middle. And their outfield, Jacob Marcy, seeing him in the World Baseball Classic making some noise. They got Owen Casey over from the Chicago Cubs, their number 1 prospect in the Edward Cabrera trade. And to me, their X factor is someone who's not going to be starting the year with the team, and that's Kyle Stowers, who had to back out of playing in the World Baseball Classic for Team USA. And Stowers last year was absolutely absurd. A guy who was in the Trevor Rogers trade. He had 25 home runs, a 288 batting average, was an all-star. Kyle Stowers, I think, has the ability to take that next step to become the next big Marlins outfielder that they've had since the Stanton, Yelich, Ozuna era. And it would not shock me if this Marlins team, depending on how these young guys click, ends up sneaking into a wild card. Am I predicting them to do so? No, but I don't think that they are completely talent deprived with no chance at playoff baseball this year. The Atlanta Braves were going to be my number one comeback team for 2026. I thought that the Braves were incredibly unlucky last year with injuries and with slumps from players they expected things out of. The Braves went into the offseason with two big holes, I would say, most people would say. And that was the shortstop position, and that was the starting pitching depth. Well, the Braves brought back Ha-Seong Kim to be their shortstop. He was pretty good for them down the stretch last year, and is a good defender, but not someone who I think is going to change life there at the shortstop spot. And in terms of the pitching staff, they extended Chris Sale, but they haven't done enough with the pitching depth. Hurston Waldrop already injured. Ronaldo Lopez, not someone that's known for innings. And it's just insane to me that a team that was considered one of the top championship dynasty level organizations just a couple years ago was filling the all-star game with players, is to the point where it's like, okay, Chris Sale is our most reliable pitcher, a guy with a lengthy injury history. Spencer Strider is a question mark. And then everyone behind him already has injuries. It's rough for me to say this. I'm picking them still to finish ahead of the Marlins because the lineup is healthy, but this team is not looking like a confident playoff team anymore. It doesn't help that Profar has been suspended the entire season for PEDs, so they're down another outfielder to start the year. It doesn't help that they're back into their bullpen, where they made their biggest addition this offseason with Robert Suarez from the Padres. Their two guys in the back end are very old. But to me, it's looking at their lineup. They have the best catcher room, I think, in Major League Baseball, between Rookie of the Year Drake Baldwin, Sean Murphy's on the IL, and they signed Jonah Heim. They were the team. I was shouting out to everyone saying there is not 60 catchers better in the sport than Jonah Heim. Why is he still out there? The Braves pick him up. The team that doesn't need a catcher, really, for the long term of it all. But Ozzie Albies, Matt Olson, Austin Riley, those guys are consistent for the infield. And then in the outfield with Ronald Acuna, Michael Harris, and they're going to be using Mike Yastrzemski a lot now that they're saying goodbye to Jerks and Profar for the year. This Braves team by no means is bad, but I think that they might have missed their window to be that dynastic team that everybody wants to be, with the team-friendly contracts they had on the books and the farm system that they had that has kind of dried up to nothing. This Braves team just feels very average, like a team that is basically trying for that old school Mariners mentality of 87 wins for that last wild card spot. And that's if everything goes right, which things are already going wrong in Atlanta. To me, the X factor for them, it really is Spencer Strider, because if he's not able to regain his Cy Young level self and give them a full season, the Braves could be in for a repeat of 2025. Now, the Philadelphia Phillies have the better team on paper than the New York Mets, but I don't think they're winning the division this year. The Philadelphia Phillies didn't have one of those off seasons where they added a lot. They kind of retained some guys and lost some guys. Their pitching staff is still phenomenal. I know Zach Wheeler is starting the year on the IL, but they have Christopher Sanchez at the top of that rotation. They've extended Jesus Luzardo. Aaron Nola is still giving them some really solid innings. They have guys like Andrew Painter that are right on the precipice of making the big league roster. And their bullpen now with Duran at the back of it, everything falls into place a lot nicer. They're going to have Alvarado back from suspension. Orion Kirkring was fantastic last year until he threw a ball away. And to me, they have a really solid pitching staff, which is usually what I go for when I talk about playoffs and winning the division is pitching. But I thought the Phillies, in terms of the way that they were talking, like the actual words of it, were going to make really big shakeups this year. I was expecting them to let some more guys walk, make some big trades, make a signing no one expected, and they almost did with the Bo Bichette signing that fell through late. But they're kind of running back a very similar team with JT Realmuto back at the catcher spot, infield being Bowman Harper at the corners with Stott and Turner up the middle. And the outfield, I guess, is the biggest switch up they've had, getting rid of Nick Castellanos. They're going to have Marsh and Rojas platooning in center field, Adolis Garcia in right. This team, it's good. It's going to be really good. They're going to win a lot of games. When Zach Wheeler comes back, they're going to look even scarier. I don't expect them to dominate the entire season. And I'm not saying this isn't a playoff team. I still think they are. I think that Dave Dombrowski will make the moves he needs to make at the deadline, like he did to get Duran last year. The bullpen was a big hole. He went out and got the best reliever. But this Phillies team, to me, I think was a real missed opportunity. And I'm interested to see how the young players that are on the precipice for them, Aiden Miller, Justin Crawford, Andrew Painter, those guys could really flip the script for this team that needs some new energy, that needs an influx of new talent and personalities. But for now, I have the Phillies finishing second in the NL East. And it's because I absolutely loved the New York Mets offseason. This is a team that, again, much like the Phillies, they needed a culture change. They needed to get some guys out of there. They needed to make some moves and address some weaknesses. And what do they go out and they trade for Freddie Peralta and Tobias Myers? One move, they get two impact arms, one who's going to start for them opening day and only make $8 million. Absolutely love that. Much like I said with Duran, with the Phillies bullpen, Peralta at the top allows everyone else in that Mets rotation to fall into place. When you have guys like Peterson and Senga and Holmes and stuff, none of them are trying to fight to be the one anymore. They're falling in the 2, 3, 4 range. They have some great young arms in Scott and Tong, McLean, obviously. This is going to be a very good pitching staff, and I would not be shocked if they end up adding again at the trade deadline with another arm to supplement. Sean Manaea is still there as well. To me, the X factor for the offense might just be their catcher, Francisco Alvarez. This is a guy who last year hit .256 with 11 home runs. Not super impressive, but Francisco Alvarez was only a year removed from being a real, I think, difference maker. And this guy is still only 24 years old. He came up so young. And when he came up in 2023, he had 25 home runs as a catcher. Back-to-back years where he played less than 100 games and did not give the kind of defensive production that you were looking for. But if he clicks and gets back to 20-plus home run power, which I very well think he can, he seems motivated. He seems to be in great shape. That's a huge piece of the puzzle to make up for the missing production of guys that they lost like Nimmo and Alonso. Alvarez coming back to that next level. The infield got a huge influx of talent. Like I said, Pete Alonso out, Jeff McNeil out. But they bring in Bo Bichette. They bring in my boy Marcus Semien. And they bring in Jorge Polanco. Those are 3 veteran players that put the bat on the ball, play defense, and aren't clubhouse problems like Jeff McNeil had become. And what this allows Mark Vientos and Brett Beatty to do is those guys now don't have to be relied on as the everyday bats. They can get platooned a little more. If they get hot, they can earn more playing time. And the flexibility of Bichette and Polanco can move those 2 around. I really, really like this Mets infield and the options they have. And that's without even mentioning Ronnie Maruccio, who's going to start the year in AAA, who's a former big prospect that can also fill in if there's an injury or a problem later on this year. This Mets outfield, Juan Soto moving to left. I think partially because Aaron Judge plays in right, so he can become the all MLB left fielder for years to come. But Juan Soto moving to left field. Luis Robert, they traded for in center field, a fantastic defensive center fielder. I think that this Mets team is primed to take that next step. I'm very in on these post-hype Mets. I think that this is the year that they get back to the playoffs. This is one of those years where the expectations aren't necessarily World Series, but this team's going to be really damn good. And I expect them to be able to add and to do what they need to do. The bullpen obviously was a weakness for them last year. They lost Edwin Diaz, but I expect them to be fine back there. And with the Devin Williams and Luke Weavers of the world back there, I definitely could see them trading for another reliever later on when that need happens. Almost every contending team needs a bullpen arm at the deadline. I'm not worried about it. I have the Mets winning the NL East. Moving over to the NL Central. This division, I know last year was surprising to people because they had not 1, not 2, but 3 playoff teams. I don't think that's going to be the case this year. The St. Louis Cardinals, which are my National League team, are going to be at the bottom. I can say that almost complete confidence. And it's because they sold off all their contending veteran pieces. Arenado, gone. Donovan, gone. Contreras, gone. Sonny Gray, gone. They traded off Ryan Helsley at the deadline last year. Lars Nootbaar has been in trade talks as well. They know that they're in the process of a most likely multi-year rebuild. Their starting rotation this year is headlined by Matthew Liberatore. He's a former top prospect who I think really has a chance and an opportunity here to finally show what he's made of. But the rest of the rotation behind him is made up of guys like Michael McGreevy and Dustin May and Andre Palante and Hunter Dobbins and Richard Fitz. it's not necessarily a rotation that is spewing confidence from me as a Cardinals guy. Ivan Herrera is being moved to DH. So it's the Pedro Pajes and Yoel Pozo show behind the plate. Alec Burleson, Nolan Gorman, these are guys that, it's now or never kind of, with like, we're going to give you a full season opportunity, 500 plate appearances. What can you do? Thomas Sagasi will work in. Mason Wynn, Gold Glove shortstop. And I think the guy who is the true X factor for this team is their number one prospect, JJ Weatherholt, who got on base at a ridiculous clip during spring, has looked really, really good. This is a guy who I think can hit leadoff for this team, be a tone setter, and be a big part of this new age Cardinals team and usher in this new era of competitive Cardinal baseball, hopefully sooner rather than later, but it definitely won't be this year. Victor Scott is a fantastic defensive center fielder. Lars Nootbaar, Jordan Walker. They have a whole range of guys that can play outfield for them this year. But this Cardinals team is not going to be very good, but hopefully has some nice strides by their young core. In terms of fourth place, I struggled with this one. I really did, because I think the Reds are going to be a little worse than most people think, and I think the Pirates are going to be a little bit better than everyone thinks. But if I'm being honest, the Pirates are a lot more likely to be bad than the Reds, even with the improvements they made. Obviously, Paul Skeens is the best pitcher in the National League. You can argue in all of baseball. They have a rotation behind him with guys like Mitch Keller and Bubba Chandler. This bullpen, they brought in Gregory Soto this offseason to help with their bullpen issues in the post David Bednar era. But they brought in real bats this offseason, man. I know I got hosed with the Akamoto false report, but Brandon Lau, Ryan O'Hearn, and Marcelo Zuna, those are real bats that raised the floor for this team. And it allowed guys like O'Neal Cruz, like the Password, like Brian Reynolds on a bounce back, and Nick Gonzalez and Spencer Horwitz as post-hype guys. It'll allow all those guys to really maybe reach a new ceiling. And I think this Pirates team is going to be very improved. I think Jared Jones coming on the mend is going to be big. I could see them selling a lot of these guys by the trade deadline, and then them finishing fourth just because half the season they don't have their good players. But this Pirates team is going to be more competitive to start the season than they have been in years. I'm very, very excited for that, and you should be too. My X factor for them would be Jared Jones coming off that injury. I almost forgot to add that in there, but he was an all-star caliber pitcher before the injury, and I think if you slate that in behind Skeens, and then like I said, everyone falls underneath that pushes Keller and Chandler and those guys down to the 3-4 slot. It makes this team just that much more compelling. I will have the Reds as the third place team. Hunter Green's already hurt to start the year. It's best case scenario. He's not going to be missing significant time, but he will be on the IL to start the year. Andrew Abbott, who was an all-star for them last year, will be the opening day starter. And they still have some interesting arms behind them in terms of guys like Nick Lodolo and Rhett Lauder and Brady Singer, of course. Brandon Williamson, the works. Terry Francona will make the pitching staff work. But this team added a Eugenio Suarez for nothing. They added guys with 40-plus home run power in one of the best offensive environments for nothing. for an offense last year that really struggled. Ellie De La Cruz didn't have the season people were hoping for. Cabrian Hayes is kind of a glove-only guy. Guys like Matt McClain and Spencer Steer and Noelvia Marte have not lived up to their prospect rankings. And that's why my X factor for them is a guy who I think is going to get serious National League Rookie of the Year consideration in Sal Stewart. Stewart, 22 years old, just absolutely unreal power. This is a guy who I think can be a Vinny Pasquantino level bat in terms of a guy that sees the ball well, gets on base, hits for power, is a run producer. And I think him getting to learn from Suarez and work in with Steer at first base, there's going to be a real chance that the combination of Suarez and Stewart lifts this Reds team back into postseason contention. The outfield has Marte out there. Blade they signed from the Sacramento A's. Will Benson's a guy who I've always liked. TJ Friedel is a good player. Reese Hins has had some moments, but a little lacking in the outfield department with a ton of infield options. The Reds are going to be a good baseball team. I just don't know if they're going to be a team that is in position to make the wild card again. Credit to them. Last year, they played well at the end of the year, and the Mets had a historic collapse, and they were able to get in. But I'm not as confident in this Reds team as some other people are in the industry. Now, I'm wearing my Cubs shirt, but I'm not naive enough to pick the Cubs to win the division. On paper, they've had the best roster the last 2 years and have still finished behind the Brewers. Fool me once, shame on you. I'm not going to get fooled again. I was right to pick the Brewers to win the division last year. I'm sticking with it again. That being said, this Cubs team is a playoff team. It is a very good baseball team. And that's with losing Kyle Tucker. They went out there and traded for Edward Cabrera, which, again, helps that rotation slot in with Matthew Boyd, who's coming off a career year. They were able to bring back my guy, Shota Imanaga, on the qualifying offer, along with guys like Assad and Brett Brown for depth. Justin Steele coming off injury. Jameson Taillon's been steady. They had a good bullpen last year that was kind of pieced together, and they're doing the same kind of method this year. Cade Horton, I think, is the X factor. If he should have been the National League Rookie of the Year last year, in my opinion. If Cade Horton can solidify himself as a true number 3 starter and a bigger sample size, this Cubs team becomes real scary for anybody. I'm very, very excited with what Cade Horton was able to put on paper last year. This is a guy who had 97 Ks in a little over 100 innings, 2.67 ERA with a 1.8 WHIP, 11-4 record. You give that kind of production over a full season, you're going to be a down ballot all-star bubble kind of guy. And Cade Horton, to me, is a very, very interesting arm behind Cabrera and Imanaga at the top with Steele on the mend. You have those 4 guys going in a playoff matchup that can compete with anybody. Carson Kelly and Miguel Amaya had a really surprising catcher platoon last year in terms of results. Moises Ballesteros, the 22-year-old, is looking to work in there, and he has incredible upside as well as a guy with 20-plus home run power in the bat, as well as someone who hits for average and has a pretty good eye for the baseball. They obviously broke my heart, and they signed Alex Bregman to go on the corner with Gold Glove defense, and their defensive infield is awesome. I'm not that Michael Busch is a great defender, but he's fine. And you look even better when you have Nico Horner and Dansby Swanson and Alex Bregman fielding for you and putting the throws on the money. Matt Shaw is going to be a super utility guy to start the year. Will play a little outfield. He'll bounce around in the infield. This team is just really, really solid. And even in the outfield, Ian Happ is one of the most steady producers and a Gold Glove left fielder. Pico Armstrong just broke out in insane ways last year, and his numbers were awesome despite his last month of the season being pretty bad. So if he can keep the foot on the gas the entire season, you're talking about an MVP candidate. Seiya Suzuki had his best offensive production year last year in terms of counting stats, and he's going to play more outfield this year. They have Kevin Alcantara as a pretty high-end prospect who's going to play some more this year. Now that Kyle Tucker has opened up that space. So the Cubs are going to be a very good baseball team, a playoff team, a 90-win team even. But they're not going to win the division because the Milwaukee Brewers are inevitable. I don't care that they traded Freddie Peralta. They've traded Corbin Burns and won the division. They've traded Josh Hader and won the division. They just know how to win baseball games. And it's through good defense, good pitching, and good approach at the plate. Very old school baseball. I totally expect Kyle Harrison, who was the headliner of the Rafael Devers trade and then was the headliner of the Caleb Durbin trade within 6 months. I completely expect him to make the All-Star team this year. Completely. He's throwing a changeup that looks nasty in spring. He's going to be good because he's pitching in Milwaukee. Jacob Mizorowski, a guy who's going to get a runway to start this year, has electric stuff. Chad Patrick, who was a down ballot Rookie of the Year guy. All these guys slating in behind Brandon Woodruff, who came back on the qualifying offer. I really, really like what they got going on. Their bullpen is still really strong and has a lot of great pieces. They have the best offensive catcher in the NL. Yeah, I'm talking to you, Will Smith. In William Contreras, I would still take him to start any team. And Gary Sanchez as a power hitting backup catcher. Their infield with Light Towers Bowers and Andrew Vaughn platooning at first base, David Hamilton as the guy to spell Bryce Terang, and Joey Ortiz up the middle now, a guy who can steal 30 bases for you. It will be a useful player for them. They signed Luis Rengifo to platoon at third base. I really liked that signing. I wanted the Red Sox to sign Rengifo. In their outfield, Jackson Chourio and Sal Frelick, both really, really solid players. Then you have the potential of guys like Blake Perkins, like Garrett Mitchell, like Akil Baddoo. They sign guys like this and they end up being productive for them. But to me, the DH Christian Yelich, he's the X factor for them because last year he revitalized his career and his Hall of Fame trajectory. Hitting 29 home runs, driving in 103 with a 795 OPS. If he can be a 25 to 30 home run guy, 100-ish RBI guy for them again, not only is that great for his Hall of Fame hopes, but that is fantastic for the Brewers winning the division again for the third time in a row. Manager of the year, back-to-back years. I love what the Brewers do, man. And it doesn't matter what's on paper. This isn't a video game. This is real life baseball. They do all the little things right. They have great prospects coming up the pipeline as well. The Brewers are going to be just fine. And not that I'm a big betting man, but the Brewers win-loss total on most sports books is below 90. I expect this to be a 90-plus win team. So do with that what you will. We're going to round things out here in the NL West, and I'll try to move a little faster. I know I'm long-winded. The National League West has baseball's biggest charity case. That's the Colorado Rockies. They're going to be the worst team in baseball this year, I think, bar none. Not that they don't have any talent. they did sign Michael Lorenzen and Jose Quintana and Sugano to try to help their rotation. These are guys that on good teams would be fourth or fifth starters. They're going to be the top 3 starters for the Rockies, and I have no faith in them. None. Hunter Goodman was an all-star for them last year. I think has a chance to do so again. Hitting 20-plus home runs as a catcher is impressive. Ezekiel Tovar, I think, is going to have a nice bounce-back year. He's still 24 years old. This guy has a great, reasonable contract. He's one of the best players on this team. And their outfield, bunch of what could have beens. Brenton Doyle post-hype, Jake McCarthy, Mickey Moniak, Zach Veen, Jordan Beck. I don't know. One of those guys I just named in the outfield is going to end up being useful for fantasy baseball. I just have no idea who it's going to be. It's going to be someone you pick up on waivers in one of the first weeks of the season after you get a little bit of a sample size. But the Rockies are going to be bad. And to me, the X factor for them really is Ezekiel Tovar. If he can get back to his all-star level shortstopness, maybe they're able to trade him for a little bit of a package to help improve the team, maybe a pitcher to headline it, because the Rockies have always struggled to get pitchers to come there. The Arizona Diamondbacks are not a bad team, but I expect them to finish 4th in this division again. I liked the moves that they made this offseason, bringing Gallen and Kelly back in the rotation. They're not game breakers anymore, but they are solid pitchers to go along with Fott and Rodriguez and hopefully a healthy Corbin Burns later this year. Gabriel Moreno was my X factor for them last year. Did not break out like I was hoping he would in his age 25 season. Nolan Arenado and Carlos Santana were brought in. These are good veteran guys you want in your clubhouse. I don't know if they're going to be able to get the most out of everyone. Ketel Marte is one of the best players in the National League. But to me, the X factor and the guy who I think is one of the few players that has a chance to unseed Shohei Ohtani in the MVP award race is Corbin Carroll. Because last year, he hit 31 home runs and 84 RBIs while leading the league in triples. And that was coming off a shoulder injury. That was only playing in 143 games. If Corbin Carroll plays closer to a full season like he did the last 2 years prior, 155 plus games, and he can go more 40-40 than 30-30 with a WAR that starts with 7 or 8, that's a guy who I already think is on the Hall of Fame path, but could one of those big outlier seasons I think is due for him here in his late 20s. And if this is the year, he's going to be 26 in August. If this is the year that he has that big outlier season and steals an MVP from Ohtani, it would not shock me. He is one of the most electric players this game has to offer. He had 5.8 WAR last year, 31 home runs. Like I said, scored over 100 runs, stole 32 bases, led the league with 17 triples. He's led the league 3 straight years with double-digit triples. That ballpark is conducive to extra base hits. His speed out of the box, his speed running the base paths. He's one of my favorite players to watch. And Corbin Carroll, to me, is the real X factor, because if the Diamondbacks don't want to finish 4th, if they want to be a playoff team, they need that outlier season from Corbin Carroll as well. The San Francisco Giants, I think, are arguably the most interesting team in baseball this year, not just because of Tony Vitello coming straight from the college game for the first time ever in Major League history, but first full season of Rafael Devers in an infield with Willy Adames, Matt Chapman, and Luis Arraez. Those are 4 guys that can hit. That's 4 guys that can field their position, and that is a really good base for an offense. You mix that with the best defensive catcher in baseball in Patrick Bailey, with Bryce Eldridge, their top prospect, who's going to play some first base and DH. And an outfield with Jung-Hoo Lee, former All-Star Helio Ramos, Harrison Bader added to the mix. This team could be something. And I think will be in the playoff chase most of the season. But when people think Giants, they think they're pitching. Obviously, Logan Webb is one of the locked and loaded aces in the game. But behind him, they brought in Adrian Hauser and Tyler Mahle, two guys that really found something last year, and I think could be those same kind of guys again in a great pitcher-friendly ballpark. Robbie Ray had a great bounce-back year last year. They have guys like Trevor McDonald and Hayden Birdsong that they really like, Carson Wisenhunt. These are young guys that are going to factor into the fold. And I think this Giants front office with Buster Posey has shown they're willing to add if they think the team is in contention, and they're willing to sell if they think the team is not. Last year, they weren't in it, and they sold a lot of their sellable pieces. And I really respected them for that. They did what you're supposed to do. Now, if they're in a position to buy with that foundation that I just talked about, this could be a real big team. But to me, the X factor for them is Rafael Devers, simply because you're getting a first full season of him. He played 163 games last year between the Red Sox and the Giants. He will not be able to play 163 this year, but he does have the chance to be the first Giants hitter to have 30-plus home runs since Barry Bonds. And if you don't remember, Barry Bonds retired almost 20 years ago. So adding that kind of bat to that lineup for the full season, Luis Arraez at the top as a tone setter, Bryce Eldridge behind him with good power as well. This Giants team, I think, is a playoff team. Now, I obviously have the Padres finishing second. I'm not doing any crazy hot takes there. The Padres have had some spending issues, but I still think their team is just so ridiculously talented that it doesn't really matter. They were able to retain Michael King, which I thought was one of the biggest moves of the entire offseason, not losing him. They brought in some guys in the back end of their rotation that I think are going to give them some innings. They have Joe Musgrove coming back, which I think is going to be huge. But it's really about their lineup. Their bullpen's great, obviously, with Jason Adam, Mason Miller, et cetera. But it's really about their lineup, is why I believe. Their catcher position is one of the worst in baseball. Freddie Fermin has been good since being a Padre, but I still don't know if he's a top 30 catcher yet. Xander Bogaerts, Jake Cronenworth, Manny Machado. These are just consummate professionals that know exactly what they're doing day in and day out. Miguel Andujar added in the outfield. Nick Castellanos playing some first base and added in the outfield. Ramon Laureano, one of the best lefty mashers in the sport. Jackson Merrill, Fernando Tatis. They can hit with anybody. And I'm super excited to see what the Padres ceiling is, having a full season of that super pen with Mason Miller at the back of it, with that lineup and with the ability to trade and add. I think the Padres, their World Series window is not shut, which was a question a lot of people were having last year. It is certainly not shut. But the champs are still here. The champs will be the division winner in the NL West. I said this during the offseason wrap-up. Even when they won the World Series last year, which they did struggle to win it, the Blue Jays gave them a real fight. It was clear that they had two gaping holes. They didn't have a lockdown closer, and they were starting guys like Andy Pages and Michael Conforto and Justin Dean and Kike Hernandez in the outfield. What do they go out and do this offseason? They get the number one closer on the market in Edwin Diaz, and they get the number one outfielder on the market in Kyle Tucker. The Dodgers team doesn't care about the Mariners' win record, even though they have the talent to get it. They don't care about XYZ. They just want to be healthy and play good baseball. Those are their goals, and they're gonna at least do the latter. This team, the starting rotation, with Shohei Ohtani healthy coming into the year, Yamamoto, Sasaki, Blake Snell, Emmett Sheehan, guys in the depth that would be starting as the number 4 or 5 starters for teams, like Bobby Miller, are still there as well. This bullpen, everyone behind Diaz slates in nicely now. They're really, really good. Will Smith, solid as they come. Dalton Rushing, fantastic young prospect now, the backup catcher who's going to, I think, push for some more playing time this year. They have Hall of Famers in the infield with Mookie Betts and Freddie Freeman. They're going to give Tommy Edman a real shot at being the everyday second baseman instead of moving him around quite as much. Max Muncy platooning at third base with Miguel Rojas. Hyesung Kim working in the outfield, adds Kyle Tucker, Andy Pages playing center field recklessly with 30 home run plop. Teoscar Hernandez, Alex Call, and Michael Ciani were good for them down the stretch last year. They're depth pieces now, and they have their top prospect is an outfielder. So the Dodgers are going to be great at baseball. Shocker. And will have no trouble winning the NL West. X factor for them is just health. It's just health. I mean, if they can sustain multiple injuries to the lineup or rotation, but as long as they don't have one of those Braves type seasons where everything goes wrong and everyone gets hurt, they're going to be just fine. Here at the Solo Shot Sports Podcast, we throw back down the third baseline to this day in baseball history. And there was a lot that I could have chosen here on March 14th, where we are live here on a Saturday night. This is, I think, fitting because I gave the Brewers their flowers earlier. But if you look at the scorecard to my right here, the Milwaukee Brewers TV, radio, play-by-play announcer Bob Uecker was awarded the Ford C. Frick Award, inducting him into the broadcasters wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame on this date in 2003. Bob Uecker, rest in peace, is one of the most impactful baseball men ever. And he did so without being a good baseball player. Yes, he was a Major League Baseball player for several years and did some great things, including hitting a home run off Sandy Koufax, despite not being a hitter that people feared by any means. He was a backup catcher for the Cardinals and Braves. His -1 career WAR and 14 career home runs in parts of 6 seasons. He also played 18 games. Played parts of 2 seasons for the Philadelphia Phillies. I always forget about that. Bob Uecker was not known for his baseball playing career, but what he was known for during his time in the big leagues and after was his personality. He was an extremely funny and likable guy. And much like we've seen now with tons of other former players getting broadcast jobs, he, I think, was a real trailblazer for that. As like, hey, like this guy has a future in TV or a future in radio based on how they answered interview questions, how they were with their teammates. And Bob Uecker's induction was long overdue at this point in 2003 because he had been the Brewers' play-by-play announcer for decades. And obviously, a lot of people remember him from the movie Major League, just a bit outside. But Bob Uecker was and to a lot of people still is Brewers baseball. Just the way he respected the game, the way he'd call a game, the way he'd treat the players. They're still, to this day, using Bob Uecker as an example and as motivation for Milwaukee Brewers baseball. And he got the ultimate honor a broadcaster could get on this date in 2003. Rounding out things here on the show, and it's looking like I could get in under an hour if I rush it. The awards. The manager of the year. I talked about it. I think the Giants are going to be a playoff team. Tony Vitello, first-year manager going from college to the big leagues. If he's able to make the Giants jump up and they finish second or third in the West and make the playoffs, that's manager of the year to me. I think that's going to happen, man. I really do. I believe in Buster Posey. I believe in what they're building over there in San Francisco, and I believe that they're willing to go for it and add. So I'm very, very excited for Tony Vitello's first year managing a Major League Baseball team, and I really hope he succeeds. Everyone should as well, because if he doesn't, it'll be really hard for the next guy. In terms of the Cy Young Award, it's very hard to not go chalk. And I'm trying at least this year for the Cy Young Award to not go chalk just because there's so much variance with pitching year to year. I feel a little more comfortable going off script. Paul Skeens showed last year in a season where your record is not super impressive, that you can still win the Cy Young. I mean, like, he was 10-10 last year and still won the damn thing. Paul Skeens is great, man. He is. But we need to see some variety. And for the people, I'm going to get cute with the pitchers. I'm extremely big believer in Yoshinobu Yamamoto. He had one of the best playoff runs we've ever seen from a pitcher. And I don't think his arm ever gets tired. Watching him pitch in the WBC, Yamamoto was very good last year. 12-8 record with a 2.49 ERA, 4.9 WAR. I still think that at 27 years old, he has another level to unlock. I think he's going to win 20 games this year. We haven't had a 20-game winner in the sport in quite a while. I think that paired with an ERA that's certainly going to be below 3 and could be below 2 will be enough to beat Paul Skeens. But Skeens is going to be one of the 3 finalists for Cy Young for the next 5 years. He is that good. But I do think the variance and how good this Dodger team is going to be and how good Yamamoto is at the top of it, I do expect there to be someone else that comes in and wins the award. My pick going with Yamamoto. MVP, I'm not going against Ohtani, just like I didn't go against Judge. Could there be an outlier Corbin Carroll season that gets it done? Could Ellie De La Cruz hit his 1% outcome and be the National League MVP? Is it possible that Yamamoto or Skeens' pitching season is so good that it garners MVP votes? All of that could be true. But if Shohei Ohtani pitches a full season and hits 40, 50 home runs like he's going to, that's your MVP. And until they make a distinction to what MVP is, or MVP is the most valuable hitter and make pitchers ineligible so his pitching stats don't get factored in, Shohei Ohtani is the greatest player anybody that's watching this has ever watched. He's that good at baseball. We are blessed to watch him play, and he's going to continue to win MVPs as long as he is pitching at a decent level paired with this kind of production, 40, 50 home runs, 20 to 40 steals. He is an absolute unicorn in the sport. And the rookie of the year, I hinted at it earlier. I think Sal Stewart from the Cincinnati Reds is going to win the National League Rookie of the Year. There are a lot of interesting candidates that have better odds to do so and definitely could. Owen Casey from the Marlins got hinted at earlier. They aren't Sal Stewart, though. And I think a big part of this is park factor. When you look at Sal Stewart and the ballpark he hits in, where he's going to hit in the lineup, I just really like his opportunity to break out and grow as an everyday bat. And is a guy who I think you should get the rookie card of in Topps flagship. I appreciate each and every one of you, Shane, Hugo, Orlando, Adam, everyone that was in the chat. Will, thank you for spending your Solo Shot Saturday with me. For those of you that are catching this on Sunday or later this week, apologies for the late showing. Had to help a friend move earlier today and enjoyed some of this nice weather that we had finally after a brutal winter. I'm Dom Manna, and I'll see you guys next week with a new look for the new season.